Okay, it is the stroke of 7 p.m. So Kate, you're already recording, great.
Yes.
All right, welcome everyone, and especially our guests from the Board of Finance this evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, May 3rd. Brief first Selectmen's report, and we'll get right down to business. First, a quick COVID-19 update. Reported cases are down significantly. Only 4 cases have been reported for the week beginning 4/23. And over the last 3 days, we've had 1 case reported. This is all really great news. There might be some seasonality to that, but we're going to take that good news on face value for right now. Our positivity rate stands at 1.88%. Demand for vaccine is also down significantly. And as a result, the town hall local clinics will run one day only, Wednesdays, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you no longer need an appointment. You could just stop in and get your vaccine. I do want to encourage everyone who has only received their first dose of vaccine that needs a second dose to be really mindful about getting that second dose. You're not considered fully vaccinated until 2 weeks after your second dose, so please mark your calendars for that. Just a couple of data points. 64% of residents aged 14 to 44 have received their first dose. 89% of Darien residents 45 to 65 have received their first dose. And remarkably, 100% of folks 65 and over have received their first dose of vaccine in Darien. Given that there is a significant number of Darien residents, about 35% actually, who are under the age of 20. I don't have any more granular data than that in terms of by specific age. But given that, and given that folks only 16 years and older are currently eligible for vaccine, we are in really, really good shape here in Darien, and my hat is off to all of those staff members in the Health and Human Service Department and all the volunteers who've done incredible work to get our community vaccinated. It does suggest, however, that herd immunity, even on a local level, if herd immunity is a thing that we should expect from COVID-19 post-vaccine, may not be achievable until younger kids are able to get vaccinated and parents are willing to give their children those vaccines. But all in all, it's very, very good news. I'd also like to announce that along with Breeds and Walgreens, CVS is also now a vaccine partner, and you don't need an appointment. You can just stop in and get an Moderna vaccine at our local CVS. I'm also really happy to share with you that we decided today to move forward with planning for a traditional Memorial Day parade. The details need to be worked out, so pencil that in your calendar for now. We're hoping that we can move forward, just need a couple of confirmations, but I think that'll be great news for the Darien public to have a return to a beloved Darien event that feels a little bit more like normal life. As you probably already know, if you hear the news, the governor's executive orders are expected to expire on May 19th. We're waiting to see if any of the COVID-19 protocols that were in the executive orders will become codified in legislation. Still waiting to hear any of that news. We are also working on protocols for a return to in-person meetings here for boards and commissions. So we'll get that information out to everyone as soon as that we've worked that out with our local health director. A couple of issues that have come up in the last couple of days. We are in need of taking down some trees in the downtown that have created unsafe conditions on our sidewalks. Strangely, we have a lot of places in town where sidewalks were constructed around a tree, and now the sidewalks are heaving, creating an unsafe condition and creating some legal liabilities for us. So I know it's heartbreaking to remove any trees, but I assure you that we are doing it in the interest of public safety. And as always, when we remove trees, as a matter of town authorized trees, we look for ways that we can replace those trees somewhere on that property or somewhere else in town, so that hopefully we're keeping our tree coverage robust here in Darien. But that brings up the next subject. I know there's been a lot of social media talk about sidewalks. And so this is an ongoing issue that we talk about all the time in Darien. And I would love the opportunity to bring back a full discussion about town sidewalks to the Board of Selectmen. And I will be inviting Ed Gentile, our Public Works Director, and representative from our local traffic authority, members of the RTM who might have interest in town sidewalks, so that we can have a full discussion about town policies regarding new sidewalks. So that's it for me. I'll turn it to Kate.
Just quickly, on the sidewalk topic, I've been asked for an update on the Norotan West project. We do have all the right-of-ways approved, or those agreements are all approved and signed. We're waiting for a final review of the documents from the state, and Ed is hoping for a construction start in August. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. We'll move on to board liaison reports. Let's start with Sarah. Anything from Thriving Youth today? No? Okay. David, anything from Blight? No? I'm going to take that as a no. Kip Coons, Oxridge.
We're still building. I'll have a full report middle of the month after we have our meeting, but we're grinding away, putting up steel.
Excellent. And Krista, anything from the Pear Tree Beach building project? I can't hear you, Krista. Looks like you're unmuted. Can't hear you. No. Okay. If there's something that you would like to report, maybe you could, if it's brief enough, you could always put it in the chat. I'm sorry that we can't hear you, or you could call into the meeting if you'd like to speak. We certainly want you to have audio access to our meeting as we move forward. Okay, so we will then move on. Kate, are there any public comments for this evening?
I have received none by email.
Let's look in the chat to see if anybody is here. Okay. And before we move into the part of our agenda that includes members of the Board of Finance participation, I'll invite Chairman Zagrodzky to call his special meeting to order.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevenson. I will do just that and call this special meeting of the Board of Finance to order.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of items here, and I know that we have Jennifer Charneski here, Finance Director, so we will need her able-bodied assistance. I do believe the Board of Finance has a lot of information that they can add as part of these discussions. So our first order of business is to discuss and take action on a resolution appropriating $762,000 for the 2021 sidewalk repair and replacement project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $762,000 to meet said appropriations. This is a very typical and annual capital project that we undertake and budget in the town budget. So I would like to just offer for whomever on the Board of Finance might have been the specialist on the Public Works capital projects this year, if you'd like to weigh in, Chairman Zagrodzky or anyone else on the Board of Finance.
I don't have any comments on that particular appropriation, although our agenda tonight really is just focusing, I think, on the Public Works contracts. I don't think I can cover anything outside of that. So, but I don't have any comments on this particular item.
Okay, I didn't actually see your warning, so I didn't know if we could tap you for some input on these items.
Well, as a guest of the Board of Selectmen meeting, you could speak on a Board of Selectmen item if you chose.
Okay.
But they can't take any votes on anything that's not on their agenda.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, then I'm feeling richly empowered now. I may go on for another hour or so. No, you're correct. This is a regular appropriation that we make for this purpose. So as a general matter, I'm fine with it. We'll certainly take it up for a formal vote and discussion at the appropriate time.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen on this resolution? I see no questions or comments. Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution appropriating $762,000 for sidewalk repair and replacement and the issuance of bonds and notes for same amount.
So moved.
Kip moves, Sarah seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, next is discuss and take action on a resolution appropriating $305,000 for the Holmes Elementary School HVAC system design project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $305,000 to meet said appropriation. So, typically we don't get too involved in projects that are from the Board of Education, but I think as a result of the Board of Finance making a decision to fund these projects from bonding, it necessitates us to, as a Board of Selectmen, approve this resolution for bonding. But these are very typical projects to upgrade HVAC systems and the next item number to replace roofs. So I'll take the HVAC system design project first. Does anybody have any questions about this funding resolution for that Board of Education project? Krista.
Is that better with audio now? Okay,
Yes,
great.
we can
I
hear you.
switched platforms. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry about that earlier. Just with these upcoming resolutions, Royal, just wanted to confirm that the bonding that we're looking to do now will not impact at all the renovations that we're also going to be potentially looking at. I just wanted confirmation from the Board of Ed.
I'm sorry, it won't impact the renovations?
Correct.
I don't really have information about that since our action tonight is to approve the funding mechanism for these projects. Jim, yes, please.
Jamie, I would just note in connection with, Paul, Frank, and myself are on the Board of Ed budget. And when we discussed these capital projects with them, they went through a fairly extensive analysis to make sure that none of these projects would overlap with or have to be redone at all in connection with these other three projects that are being put forward. So I think, Chris, with your question,
Correct. That's what I wanted to confirm.
Perfect. We are grateful that you're here. Jim, thank you.
Thank
Are
you.
there any other questions about the HVAC system design project or the funding resolution therefore? Nope. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve appropriating $305,000 for the Holmes Elementary School HVAC system design and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $305,000 to meet said appropriation. Sarah moves. Krista seconds. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, number 3, discuss and take action on a resolution appropriating $863,000 for the Royal Elementary School roof replacement project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $863,000 to meet said appropriation. Does anyone on the Board of Selectmen have any comments or questions about this funding resolution? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve. Sarah moves. May I have a second? Kip seconds. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, and then we have our annual resolution appropriating, I believe it is, correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, appropriating $30 million to refund certain of the town's outstanding bonds and authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds or amounts available in unassigned fund balance to finance such appropriation. I believe this is something that we do every year to give the town flexibility for this.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does anyone on the Board of Selectmen have questions or comments about this resolution? Yep.
I just like a little further explanation on what the process is, what you're looking for, refunding certain bonds outstanding. What are your hopes on this one in terms of the timing and what you think you might be able to achieve?
At the moment, we don't see any opportunities for refundings. We don't have anything that's callable. Legislation does not currently allow us to do advance refundings, but if an opportunity were to arise that either advance refundings become allowable again or some other circumstances arise, we would be able to take advantage of those by having this already approved.
So this is just like give us the opportunity in case it shows up.
Right. So we can jump
Thank you.
and move on it quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Kip, we do this every year because once a number of years ago, and I'm going to say it's probably a dozen years ago, we actually lost an opportunity to refund because we had to go through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, RTM to get the approval. And by the time we got all three approvals,
You lost
the
the
opportunity
opportunity.
is gone.
I got it. Yep. You'd think I know about this after 5 years, but then again, what the heck?
Well, if you go to the RTM meeting, you'll hear about it, I'm sure. It's included in Jack's speech every year.
I have a process question, Kate and Jen. Is this the best timing to approve this resolution, or should we be approving this resolution earlier in the process, either right after the Board of Finance votes on the budget or when we vote on the budget?
It's a standing resolution, so this is good. And if you do it every year, it's kind of evergreen.
Okay.
And this resolution, Jen, unless you change the wording of it, it rescinds the prior resolution.
Yes, it still does that.
Yeah, so it just keeps your ability ongoing.
Okay. Okay, are there any further questions about this refunding mechanism? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution as stated.
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Krista. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed, abstentions, motion carries. That's great. All right, and item number 5, discuss and take action on a request for a special appropriation of $2,785,630 to transfers out to other funds, and I'll turn it to Jen for this one.
The Board of Finance during their budget deliberations reviewed the town's general fund balance and determined that they wanted to use a portion of that fund balance towards covering capital projects in the fiscal 22 budget. So what we have done in the budget is approve the projects. They total about $4.2 million. The Board of Finance is also using $1 million of their capital reserves account. And then between the town aid road and LoSiP revenues that go into capital, the balance that was left unfunded was this $2,785,000. So rather than use the operating budget and tax for it, they're transferring the operating budget. The Board of Finance has determined they want to use fund balance to cover the rest of the capital projects. So what this appropriation does is move fund balance from general fund to the capital fund in the current year so that it's available to fund fiscal 22 capital projects.
Thank you very much, Jen, and I really appreciate the hard work on the part of the Board of Finance to utilize well the funds that we have available for budget purposes in this way. Are there questions from the Board of Selectmen about this? Is it an appropriation, not a transfer? How would you classify this, Jen?
It is a special appropriation.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen? Kip?
When this is all done, the fund balance, the general fund balance, as a percent of the annual spend will be what? In line with where you wanted to be, or still above that number? Give us sort of a feeling.
Well,
It
that's,
was above the 12%. I think when we did the math, it was around 15.5%.
yeah, that's right. It's a little bit of a matter of debate. The Board of Finance policy floor is 12%, as Jen says. By keeping it around 15.5, between 15 and 16, I don't have that figure in front of me. That's certainly consistent with what the ratings agencies have told us. We selected a lower floor simply because the town has a lot of other positive financial attributes that would suggest maintaining a fund balance as high as that was not something we needed to set by policy.
Great, thank you.
Other Board of Selectmen questions? No? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the special appropriation of $2,785,630 and transfer that out to other funds.
So moved.
Kip moves.
Second.
Thank you, David. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, thank you. I think I saw Pam Geary here. And this is to discuss and take action on a request from Parks and Recreation for a special appropriation of $250,000 for the Parks and Rec program revenue and expense accounts. And I think everybody received your transfer memo on this, which is very self-explanatory about program registrations have increased 215% compared to spring of 2019, bringing in approximately $550,000 more in revenue. But with that revenue comes higher expenses. So this $250,000 is meant to handle the expense overage. Pam or Kate, is there anything you'd like to add to what I just said or the memo we received?
No?
No, unless you have questions.
No, you were kind enough to join us this evening, so I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about this kind of explosion in parks programming. I think it's fantastic, and just would love to give you the floor for a moment.
Well, what's interesting here, and I know it was a little confusing to understand as to how, why we moved in this direction, but I think as Kate explained in one of her emails today, which is, to be more transparent in terms of showing the public the revenues and all the expenses. And, this year, yes, explosive. It will be difficult to understand next year whether or not we will be we'll bring in as much revenue as we did this year due to these unusual times. But absolutely shows how much Parks and Recreation has become an essential service to the residents, and they are wanting more. And even now, very difficult to understand how much more revenue we'll bring in or expenses, because each week residents ask for more. So when one class finishes up, they're asking if we can start another, and if we can, we try to do so. So it's been phenomenal.
Fantastic. Anybody have questions for Pam? Sarah?
Hi, Pam. I don't know that I was on the email, if there was another email with some more information. I guess I just want to understand, is this an accounting method change? Is this something, okay. Because it seems to be a lot of money without a lot of detail associated with it. So I'm just trying to understand. So is this just for the next 6 to 8 weeks? And then do you have any concerns about the next year's budget starting in July 1st?
Kate, do you want to explain it, or do you want me to?
It's an accounting change that we put in place a couple of years ago, or it's a result of an accounting change we put in place a couple of years ago. We used to run both the revenues and expenses through what we called a contra account. It was a balance sheet account some would say off budget. It was not the most transparent way to do this. But what this is those programs that Parks and Rec runs that are self-supporting. So you never saw it in the past. We would just take the revenue in periodically. So what we did a few years ago was we now budget both the revenue and the expenses. So what we're facing here, which we didn't have to deal with in the past, is if the programs are wildly successful and they're making so much money and there's so much demand for more, in order to actually spend more, we have to increase the expenditure side of the appropriation. So there's two ways you can do that. You could transfer from another account, or if it's available, you can raise the revenue side. So to keep the budget in balance, we're raising both sides. We're not asking for as much of an increase in the expenditure side as we have available in additional revenues, because Pam has estimated what expenditures she'll need for the balance of the year. But you'll see this, it's seriously profitable.
I like that word, seriously profitable.
Are there any other questions for Pam or Kate?
But to answer Sarah's question, this is to the end of the fiscal year, or it goes all the way through?
Fiscal
year.
So you know, if the demand, I would say if the demand for programs keeps up, you might see the same kind of thing happen next year. I don't know, recall offhand, Pam, how much you budgeted for next year.
I believe 650. So we very well could be looking at the same type of special appropriation.
That's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
And that certainly underscores our need to continue to reinvest in our parks, because I'm sure with all of this programming, our facilities are getting well worn, which is a good thing. Okay, if there are no other questions about this, then I'll entertain a motion to approve a special appropriation of $250,000 to from program revenue to program expense.
So moved.
It moves. May I have a second? I'm sorry, who was that? Was that you, Krista?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Okay, now we move into old business, and I'd like to, in the interest of saving time from our friends from the Board of Finance, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to take item 8 before item number 7.
So moved.
Thank you, Kip. May I have a second? Sarah?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to discuss and take action to recommend the approval of the AFSCME contract. And I think we've all discussed this in the past, but would love to give Kate an opportunity to make some comments if she so wishes, and to open up the floor for questions and discussion.
Quick comment, I guess, is I think we had a really good team, 3/4 of which is here tonight. Jen and Jim Palin, and Lori Dunn was the 4th member of the team. I think this is a good contract both for the employees and for the town. And as they always say, you know, we didn't get everything we wanted. They didn't get everything they wanted, but I think it is good for us. I think it sets us up well economically for the future. So I'm not sure how much the Board of Finance has had an opportunity to discuss it, but here to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, we've not actually discussed the contract. I know, as you mentioned, Jim was part of the negotiating team. So, Jim, if there were any other highlights you'd like to bring to everyone's attention, I know it was all pretty well covered in the materials that you sent out, Kate.
Kate, that's right. This was the first gathering that we've had since it's been public and so forth. So I haven't done that. I think the summary memo was great. I think if you want to point out, anything in there, you go ahead.
Sure.
Otherwise,
Okay, so let me run through the real highlights, the economic highlights. The wage increases retroactive to July 1st of 2020, it's 2.25. July 1st, 2021 will be 2.25, and July 1st, 2022 will be 2.5. These wage increases, the first 2 years are about at the average negotiated settlements throughout the state. We did agree to the retro increase for 2020-21 and to the higher increase in the third year because they were willing to give us a defined contribution pension plan. So those were the 2 points. They asked for those things in exchange, and we felt that that was fair and reasonable. There were no significant changes to the benefit plan on the medical plan. We did get increases in the premium share for the employees, going to 10% this coming July, 10.5% the next July, and 11% on the last day of the contract. And the reason we do that is because just like this year where the contract's already almost a year old by the time it's going to be signed, if we didn't have that last day of the contract provision, they would have gone a year without an increase in the premium share. But at the same time, they usually do get retro wage increases. And so, as I mentioned before, we gave them the wage plan, or we agreed to the wage plan that we did in part because they agreed to a defined contribution plan for new hires. That plan will be, it's a 5-5-5 plan. It'll be employees make a 5% contribution, we match it with a 5% contribution, and they vest after 5 years. There were some other language changes that I think were in the memo that Lori Dunn prepared, but these are the major economic changes. So,
does anyone have any questions for Kate?
Nope, that's a good deal.
I've got a question, Kate. On the defined contribution plan, how does that compare to what the town would have been required to fund into the defined benefit plan?
Off the top of my head, well, it's definitely lower. I'd have to go look it up. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but the last couple of years, it's gone anywhere from, I think, 8 to 10% of employee pay. That when you take our actuarial determined contribution, it's been approximately 8 to 10% of the employee's pay. So this is, in that regard, it's good for us. It also stabilizes the contribution going forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Kate, in the defined in the defined contribution plan, is it mandatory for all employees in the contract, or is the 5% employee contribution their choice?
It's mandatory.
Sure.
But they could contribute more, right? The 5% mandatory employee contribution is the minimum, right?
Well, the way we'll set it up, no, they would have the option to contribute more to a 457, which is a separate plan.
Thanks.
so Kate, just to point out, this is a matching plan, correct?
Yes. Well, let me say, yeah, they put in 5, we put in 5. Sometimes you see plans say the employees must put in 3, the town will match up to 6. This is a flat, they put in 5, we put in 5.
They put in up to 5, is that correct? And
No,
then we
they put in
match up to
5.
5?
They have to put in 5, which is what employees put into the defined benefit plan.
Okay. Any other questions? I want to thank you all for your work on the contract. I want to thank Lori for putting together the memo materials for us. If there are no further questions, then I will entertain a motion from the Board of Selectmen to approve the contract language as has been presented to us this evening.
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second? Krista seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Great, and John, I don't know if you're going to vote this evening or if you're going to meet separately to take a vote, but I'll turn the floor to you.
I don't believe we have a formal role in the approval process. We certainly could get a sense of the Board of Finance if that's helpful, but from here it goes directly to the RTM. And so the reason for meeting at this time was to give us an opportunity to hear about the contract before it goes to the RTM, because we're not meeting again until after the RTM approves this.
Okay. I'm sure the RTM would likely appreciate hearing your comments or getting a sense of your board on your thoughts on the contract.
Yeah, I think the overview's been pretty complete. I would applaud the team for its efforts, but also the union representatives. Everyone fought hard in this negotiation, so I appreciate that. I certainly didn't have any other questions. If there were no other questions from my board, we could just move to a sense of the Board of Finance, if that would be helpful. Does anyone have any other questions before I ask for a motion on that? Okay, could I get a motion from someone on the Board of Finance for a sense of the Board of Finance vote in favor of this contract? No, I can't see everybody because I'm not on everyone.
I see Jim raised his hand, as did Rob Cardone.
I got Jim and I got Rob seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous on our end.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you all very much, everybody. I appreciate so much that you joined us this evening. Hope to see you again, and you're more than welcome to stay on board with us as we discuss the town code, but I suspect you might have other things to do.
As much as we would like to, I'm afraid we're all needed elsewhere.
Okay, thanks again for joining.
All right, let me just ask for a motion to adjourn for Board of Finance. Okay, Rob, a second, Frank. Okay. All right, Board of Finance is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good meeting.
Okay, we will then go back to old business, item number 7, review of town code for recommendation to RTM of potential revisions. Kate has lined up for us tonight sections 9 through 12 and the sidewalk snow removal.
So what was included in your packet was just some specific questions that I wanted to raise for you. So, you feel free to discuss other
Great.
things.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's just start from the top of Kate's recommended section. Section 33 is the composition, organization, and procedure for the police commission. I do not feel comfortable having the discussion about this evening without input from the leadership team at the police department and from the sitting police commission. So I do open it up to any board comments or questions, but would like for us to visit this when we can get some input from those folks.
I would agree. I think their input is invaluable before we make any recommendation moving forward to the RTM.
Sarah,
I would
question?
agree. Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the issue is it's great to have these, in place, but if we have no enforcement because the police department is unable to do that due to their workload or what have you, or they're uncomfortable, I think it's going to be difficult without their input.
I'm not sure that I'm following you, Sarah. Sorry.
We
just
talked about who would be enforcing,
We're on the number of commissioners on the police commission right now, section 33.
We were talking about snow removal.
Not
We
yet.
just said,
Not yet.
I am.
So if you look in your Board of
Thank you,
Selectmen
yeah.
agenda on page
I
7.
am. But
Okay.
I'm way ahead. I'm clearly, yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, any other comments or questions about this one? Can we bring this one back after we get some more input?
Sure.
And just on this, I would be curious, I mean, I'll do some research too as to what are other towns doing. That would be the piece of information I think would be helpful.
Sure, yep. David, did you have a comment or a question? No? Okay, then let's move on to section 35, chapter 10, section 35, which is the Department of Human Services. There's a couple things here that Kate has flagged for us. She'd like to know if we're comfortable with the size of the commission. I have not ever gotten feedback, positive or negative, about the number of people that serve on the Human Service Commission, just that they form provide a very important service and good support to our Human Service Department. I'm very comfortable with 7 commissioners. Maybe I'll just open that up for board comment.
I think it's too large. I think 5 is the right number at most. That's just my point of view.
Okay.
7 people is a lot of people to appoint on a rotating basis. It's also, it's a large number. I'm not sure what 7 people have to do with versus 5.
Okay, duly noted.
I
Anyone
would
else
think that
have
we
any-
want it,
Go ahead, David.
I would think that we would want to extend the same courtesy to Ally and the commission that we do to the police commission and the PD, and at least get some input from them before we entertain a change. But I take Kit's comment about the size and everything to heart. It sounds intuitive to me, but I would obviously like to give them a voice.
I agree. I think it's right.
Absolutely. Krista?
Exactly. I can't opine on it. I would like to hear what they would recommend and how they feel.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. You know, knowing that sometimes these positions present opportunities for people to volunteer in the community. So, you know, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk to Ally and the individual who's chairing the commission at this time. Kate, you already mentioned noting the gift provision that we've previously discussed. So that discussion is ongoing, correct? But I have something else in here that I want to flag, and that is that the proposed annual operating budget is reviewed by the Human Service Commission. I am not certain that that is happening in practice. Do you have any flavor on that?
I don't have any flavor on that. I'm going to guess that it probably is not. My one comment on that would be, you know, what makes them different from other boards and commissions where the board does not review the annual operating budget of its office?
Right.
You know, for example, there's no provision requiring planning and zoning to do that. We do have a mix. We do review it even though they're not obligated to by charter.
I agree with that and would like to see some consistency across the charter in that regard.
So you're saying, Kate, that other commissions don't approve the budgets, don't review and approve the budgets?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other comments or questions about that particular issue or on this section of human services? We'll reach out to Ally and to the chairman of the commission and bring this back. Okay, next section is section 39, budget estimates and appropriations and tax rates. Kate, I think your question here is it necessary for us to have a meeting where we transfer the budget from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance, correct?
Correct. And I'll tell you,
Would we miss that annual opportunity?
oh, I'm sure you would, desperately. It actually didn't happen for a long time. And in reviewing dates in the charter when I was finance director, when saw that there, way back in the early 2000s and said, oh, we need to be doing this. But I don't know that it's necessary to actually hold a meeting. It is important for there to be, for the budget to be transmitted. And I think, it's important to have a deadline by which you must do that. But do you really need to have a formal meeting at which you deliver it? I would much rather see a formal meeting that requires the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to sit down and discuss the budget, whether it be at the beginning or at the end of the process. But just turning it over, it doesn't, in presenting it to them formally, I don't think does as much as if you sat down and talked about what your goals were, what you were hoping to achieve, what your priorities were, so that you can better inform them as they go about their process.
So I really agree with that. I think that's an excellent idea. And I think the timing of that meeting is important. You want to have enough time for the Board of Finance members to have reviewed the budget, to understand what we've presented, but not so far into their process that we wouldn't be able to compel them in one way or another to support what we've presented to them. So I'd love to give that further consideration about changing the process. And I'll open it up to board comments on it. No comments. Okay. The 6 year,
6 month.
6 month, I think that the information that we get in the budget about year to date, don't we get year to date information?
The charter requires that we provide 6 months, and that's what we, so there is a report that we usually do that has the 6 month information, but it's not, in my opinion, as informative as a year to date number would be. And it can also be misleading if you aren't aware of the nature of an account and you don't know that something, doesn't get 80% expended until March or, even May, like I go to a conference every year. It usually occurs in May or June. So you won't see a lot of money move out of my budget for conferences until May or June. So if you're looking at the 6 month number, you're like, oh, well, you only spent $200, you only need $400 next year. And that's not the case. So I think that the 6 month number is very misleading, and to require it, I don't think it serves a great purpose.
I think technology has really helped us advance to the point where we can have year-to-date numbers, which are far more useful, in my opinion. 6 month data is outdated. So I welcome the opportunity to offer that change. Comments?
I would support a change to year-to-date number in lieu of 6 months.
Yep. Anyone else?
As long as you feel you can generate the numbers in time, that's fine.
Absolutely, we can.
Okay. If there's nothing else on section 39, then we will move on to section 40, finance and taxation. Kate, could you talk about the issue here? The first thing that I want to flag in this is this note about an actual emergency. I think we need to define that in some way, because when we have emergencies, there are emergency powers that kick in that give authorization for certain members of the administration to make decisions about spending. So I don't know what's intended here.
Yeah, I don't know what they intended, to determine that an actual emergency has arisen. I suppose, you could go back to the last year's budget. If say the budget had been approved before the pandemic really hit, that clearly would have been an actual emergency that might have led to making a change in the budget. But you have to read the whole, section here, because there's different things that happen. You could have a special appropriation where you actually laid an additional tax. When you read the whole, I don't think that the emergency part of it is really the problem. What I see as the bigger problem is, just take, for example, tonight, the Parks and Rec special appropriation. Say it was a small amount that they needed. It was $5,000, and they were able to justify it with $5,000 in revenue. Something that small, though, because you're raising both sides of the budget, it's not transferring from one appropriation that exists to another appropriation. You would have had to go to the RTM for a $5,000 item. Conversely, if that $250,000, if the Board of Finance felt safe taking it from contingency, a $250,000 item would not have had to go to the RTM. And that's a significant movement of funds. So I think there ought to be the ability for the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to be able to move smaller amounts of money or address new money that's not already appropriate in the budget when it's in small amounts without having to go all the way to the RTM. But I also think it's very important that if it's over a certain threshold, I really think it should trigger RTM involvement, regardless of the source of the funding.
So Kate, if I'm understanding your comment correctly, currently, if the Board of Finance chooses to allocate funds either from their contingency reserve or the capital contingency reserve, they can do so without RTM approval?
Correct. The Board of Finance has the ability to move money from one appropriated account, an existing appropriation, to another existing appropriation, regardless of the dollar amount.
So then the way that you made your prior comment, I got the impression that you were thinking of having a minimum threshold that would apply both to the Board of Finance and the RTM?
So say we got a grant. No, grant's not a good example. What we were doing tonight was, basically taking advantage of the fact that we had raised more revenue than we had budgeted to be able to spend more money than we had budgeted. If we were looking at a less significant number, we still would have had to go to the RTM because we weren't moving money from an existing appropriation to an existing appropriation. We were asking to increase both sides of the equation. So we were bringing in new money that was not already budgeted anywhere. To bring in new money, it doesn't matter how much, it has to go to the RTM. So I think there should be an amount where we could bring in new money and it wouldn't require RTM action.
So Kate, what's your recommendation? Is it 25,000? Is it 50? Is it 100?
I would suggest that Board of Finance ought to weigh in on that concept.
I was just going to say that. I think the Board of Finance should be part of this decision-making process. I agree with everything you said, Kate, that there should be thresholds of approval that don't require RTM approval, but at a certain level must require RTM approval.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's ask the Board of Finance to have a discussion about this section 40 of chapter 11. And give us input.
Okie dokie.
Could I ask for some understanding of item B under section 40? When I read this paragraph, the way that it's written, it almost implies that if a special appropriation is required, that a special tax would be levied to pay for it. It doesn't mention or reference at all the use of the Board of Finance contingency funds to pay for it as a separate way to pay for it.
Okay, so go down to section 41. The Board of Finance may make transfers of unexpended balances from one appropriation to another. Okay. So
we consider the contingency funds to be an appropriation?
Oh, absolutely, it is. It is an appropriation.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand.
Don't confuse contingency with fund balance. Okay, fund balance is not an appropriation, but contingency is an appropriated item in the budget.
Got it.
But if you wanted to be extreme, you could say you could take $2 million from debt service and move it somewhere else without going to the RTM. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we'll ask the Board of Finance to discuss this issue. Okay, section 43, capital expenditure planning. So this one was a new one to me. The way things work right now is that the departments prepare a current year plus 5 years, so a 6-year capital plan that then Kate and the finance department aggregate into the town's 6-year capital plan. So I'm going to recommend that we continue with the practice of providing the 6-year capital plan as part of the budget process, but that it's the town administrator that prepares and delivers to the Board of Selectmen the 6-year capital plan as drafted by the various departments. It's just codifying what current practice is.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you like the 6 years rather?
Yeah, in terms of the dates, I think the dates should just match what the budget process is when the town administrator delivers the budget to the Board of Selectmen.
I agree. And you like the 6 years rather than 5?
Well, we talked about that today, and what we really think the intent probably was a look at the current year plus the next 5. I certainly favor, as much future planning as you can possibly do. That's within the realm of being realistic. The further you go out, the more difficult it gets to be accurate. But I do like that we give some thought to out years planning. Yes.
Fair enough. That's good.
Questions, comments about that? No? Okay. All right, then on to the fun and games of snow and ice removal. David, yes.
Can we go back to item 41 for a second? In the middle of the paragraph, it says, said board may also by resolution permit any town department to carry over unexpended balances of appropriations. So again, I'm going to need some interpretation from Kate to help me understand. When I read this, my first thought was, well, geez, if they don't spend everything in their annual operating budget, they can carry it over to the next year if the Board of Finance gives them permission to do so. And I thought that those types of items we were trying to not make accessible, so that every year, if the purposes that they had intended in the current year are still valid and they wish to seek reapproval of them in the subsequent year, for that same project, the project was just the whatever they were going to use the money on was just delayed for whatever reason, that they would then have to seek reapproval rather than be allowed to carry over the balance.
So personally, I'd be in favor of taking that completely out.
That's where I was headed.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly.
Yeah, I have not in 20 plus years here ever seen it happen. The only way we allow people to carry over a balance is if they have a legitimate purchase order for an item that they have legitimately, you've placed an order for something prior to June 30th, it simply hasn't arrived, then you can carry the value of your purchase order over. But if you haven't spent your operating supply budget by June 30th, it's gone. And like I said, I've never seen it happen in 20 years where anyone has made such a request. And I would be in favor of a recommendation to remove that completely.
So I want to be cognizant that the Board of Finance also has purview over the Board of Education budget. And I believe that they carry funds over. So I want to make sure that what we recommend doesn't impact any of those decisions.
Yeah, I believe they can only carry over as allowed under this special provision of the state statutes that lets them carry a certain percentage of their budget over, but that does require our Board of Finance approval.
Okay, so in some way, I think that language should probably find its way into the town code.
Sounds like another item for Board of Finance input.
Yeah.
But David, your point is we should get rid of this ability to take unexpended balances and just roll them forward, right?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I mean, in general practice, we don't do it, so.
Right, so why have it in the language?
Exactly. That's where I was headed. I had not thought about the Board of Ed side. We would definitely want to make sure with the Board of Finance that's kosher.
Okay, that makes good sense.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments or questions about that? We'll get Board of Finance input on this item as well. Okay, moving on to snow removal. I think in a nutshell, we've discussed this in the past, but in a nutshell, currently the town really doesn't have the right enforcement tools to compel someone to remove the snow from their sidewalk. We would like the ability to, if the homeowner or property owner does not remove snow within a certain period of time, to provide a mechanism, first and foremost, to make those sidewalks safe. That's the primary motivation. And you can see that Kate has provided some suggested language here on how we could accomplish that. And I know that there are other towns that do this very thing in terms of having either their public works or contractors after a certain period of time clear certain sidewalks and then bill back the property owners. So I think that you've given us a bunch of different examples of language here, Kate. In concept, I support that. But in supporting that, I recognize that we are creating a new work burden on the part of public works, and a budgetary burden, and a billing and a collections burden. So, and possibly a legal burden. But clearing sidewalks is really important for public safety. I'd like to get comments from everybody about that process, but can we also talk about the issue of citations for not clearing sidewalks and how we can better improve the giving of citations and seeking compliance through issuing citations. Am I correct in assuming, Kate, that this mechanism of the town clearing the sidewalks would occur after we've issued a citation?
No, my thought would be that it would take the place or be in conjunction with issuing a citation. So it would be, you get cited, and since you haven't done it, we're going to do it for you, and you're going to pay the fine for not doing it yourself, and you're going to pay the fine for the cost of clearing it by the town. You know, one of the problems we have with our current system is that we could cite you, but we don't have a hearing officer to hear any cases, any appeals of the citations. But it also doesn't solve the problem of the uncleared sidewalk. So, you know, if you're somebody who lives on a route to one of the schools where children walk, they're not bused, and you don't clear your sidewalk, citing you doesn't get the sidewalk made any safer for those kids. So I think we do need a mechanism. Well, it depends on how you all feel about it, but if you want the sidewalks cleared, we're going to need a mechanism to force the clearing of it. And that might be that our employees do it, or we hire a contractor to do it.
Sarah?
So to my earlier mess up with the pages, the current language says that the police are to give the citations. If we were to increase kind of enforcement of this, what is their input on kind of this increased desire to look at the enforcement of these? We do have several properties that seem to be regular kind of problems as far as clearing the sidewalks. Yeah.
The feedback that I have gotten so far is that without a hearing officer, the citation doesn't do much, because there's no further enforcement of it.
So, you know, as we're talking about this, we're really looking to create something akin to our blight ordinance, right? Redrafting this in a way that you create a whole process by which someone gets cited, they have the ability to appeal, which you have to provide by statute. And then, you know, and they have a period of time in which to cure. There has to be a mechanism for somebody that would be elderly and incapable of clearing their sidewalk. So there's a human service component here. So, you know, I think that this deserves some really careful thought. I'd really like to get the input of the RTM on how to redraft this part of the code. Krista, you had a comment, question?
I just wanted to approach it from the perspective of clearly with safety first. I mean, that is clear. I think everyone's objective. Is it possible for the town to just assume this responsibility? And is that done in other communities?
Is it possible? Certainly it's possible. I
Or
don't
what are
know.
the ramifications of, okay, I'm sorry, then taking that thought, what would you imagine, what would be required, or perhaps I'd like to understand that a little bit more, and do other communities do it?
I'm not aware of any other communities that do it, but I haven't done that kind of research.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely that they do it.
Okay.
Ramifications, it's cost. You know, how many miles of sidewalk do we have?
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take to clear it? You know, is that an employee? Is that a contracted service? What liability do we take on because we have, because we are now doing that?
But if we were enforcing that anyway, would we have a liability?
I'm sorry?
If we're enforcing the fact that sidewalks must be cleared, wouldn't well, maybe we'll let the attorneys opine on that.
Well, right now, the property owner who has the responsibility to clear the sidewalk in front of their home, they have the liability. If we take it on, then we own all the liability. But is that a service that you think we should, I mean, that's I think the biggest question, is that a service that you think the town should be providing?
So can I just hop in here for a second? We have over 20 miles of sidewalks in Darien.
No, again, but I'm thinking as we're going down the other conversation of the review board and the citation process, that the feasibility of implementing something, not impossible, of course, but I obviously wanted to throw it out there. Is this a service we could provide? Some communities do garbage collection, for example, for residents. We don't. Is this something the town could take on?
Well, what I'll do is I'll see if Ed can provide any kind of estimate of cost. Because obviously we do have some sidewalks that do belong to, are in front of our property. So we should be able to provide an estimate of how long it takes to clear a certain amount, like how much long it would take to clear a quarter mile, and therefore how long it would take to clear 20 miles.
Right, extrapolate, because we're also looking at exceptions to people, of course, elderly or who are unable to clear. I was just getting a little concerned going down the path of the exception and the implementation of this. Is it safer overall just to take it on?
Sarah, did you have a comment or a question?
It's an interesting thought process to take it all on, and I'm curious as to the cost factor, right? If we have 20 miles, is it extra staff during the winter? What does that entail? Is it contractors? And I'm curious, it's a liability issue, but how many repeat offenders do we have? Like, if we were to just take on this particular list of, these are the people that we normally know don't do it, so we're going to head out and check and see if they've done it. If not, we'll do it, and then we'll bill them back. I'm curious as to that number also.
Okay. And I suppose where they are would be also important.
Right.
So I'm the last person to support government bureaucracy, but there's a reason why you build the framework around issuing a citation and allowing someone to cure and placing a lien like we do in the case of the blight ordinance. It really is all in an effort to gain compliance with the safety rules that we have here in Darien. I think if you go down the path of suggesting that we just take it on, I think people will immediately enjoy absolving themselves of any responsibility to clear their sidewalks. And I don't know if we want to go down that road. I'll be interested to hear from people. Do I think that we could have a more detailed conversation about important sidewalks that need to be cleared on a timely basis so that children can walk safely to schools and commuters can walk safely to train stations? Absolutely. But I definitely, at this point in time, it would be hard to compel me to have the town take on clearing over 21 miles of sidewalks, and then that becomes a real factor in a desire to build more sidewalks. Because it comes with a huge operational expense. David.
I'm gonna agree with everything that Jamie just said, and I'm gonna make one other additional suggestion, which is I'm not sure that the police need to necessarily play a role in the citation process. If you think about it, or when I think about it, the residents who use the sidewalk, or the kids, or the parents of the kids, they will typically know faster and sooner that someone's not complying than the police, who have to drive around and look for it all over town. And if we, set up a mechanism where residents could notify Public Works that a particular stretch wasn't done, you dispatch the crew. If they get there and it's not done, the citation is served simultaneous with the cleanup process. And then that way, the enforcement of any time period for payment of the citation is exactly linked with the date of the issuance of the citation. Citation gets issued the same time that the cleanup occurs, so that you can enforce the billing associated with the receipt of the citation, which is effectively the bill for the consumer.
So you're suggesting that Public Works issues the citation?
Somebody has to go verify that it's not compliant, right?
Yep.
That's going to fall to Public Works. And, you know, while they're already there, they might as well clean the sidewalk then, because the point is to get them cleaned as quickly as possible. And the citation would be simultaneous. Before they roll away, they put the citation in the mailbox and they're done.
So the way it currently works, the police department go out and knock on doors and seek voluntary compliance. I believe that that's still a valuable part of the process. But once the opportunity for voluntary compliance is not met, then I think there's an opportunity for a citation and the clearing of the sidewalk. I really like the idea that you brought up about having a mechanism to report it. You know, cities have like pothole hotlines. You know, maybe we could create some kind of an email address that goes to the Public Works Department, you know, that you know, where you can report those stretches of roadway. But I do believe, you know, just because, you know, I'm empathetic in that everybody has circumstances in their life, right? Somebody in the household might be sick, for example. They might be away. They're, you know, the person that clears their snow maybe didn't show up that day and they're unaware because they're at work or they're traveling. So I think there's some room for a little bit more of a process here that gives people a chance, but a limited chance, because safety is the first priority.
I would propose that room come in the format of an appeal process, so that if someone has special circumstances, like any of the ones you just described, they've received the citation, they then, you know, present and say, hey, here's why it didn't get done. Please waive the fee. And then the review board or whatever gets established would opine on whether that's appropriate or not. That would let us cover and compile a list for the elderly or those who are unable to comply, and give every other citizen a right to say, hey, you know, my contractor, I paid them to come do this. They failed to show, you guys came and cleaned. You know, it's a one-time thing. Give me a break this time. So, as far as the police department, I completely hear what you're saying. The only thing I would want to avoid is, by the time the police department gets notified, they go out, they ask for compliance. How long do we give them before they have to comply? And by then the snow is melted before it's ever been cleared.
Well, everybody has 24 hours, you know, post the end of the snow event, which somebody needs to make that determination. Ed Gentile was telling us that, you know, some towns actually post when that is, that time. So you've got 24 hours to clear before any other action is taken.
There's one town that has a clock on their website.
No, that part I completely agree with. I just, you know, let's say it's 24 hours from the end of the snowstorm, and then the police department goes to seek compliance, and then that takes a day, and then another 24 hours before you've discerned if they've actually complied. You've now given them 3 days post snowstorm to comply, as opposed to 24 hours post snowstorm, citizen calls in, Public Works shows up, takes care of it, issues a citation.
Sarah.
I think one of the issues is that we're creating this idea of a review board, right? Like a blight review board, but like the snow ordinance review board. And we'd have to be coming up now with another language to put one together and manning it. And
Well, it's just a hearing officer, and Kate and I have been batting this around for a long time. We have hearing officers that are required for other things. like parking violations, right? And what else, Kate?
False alarms.
False alarms. So something that I'd like to bring to this board is a job description for hearing officers, and it would encompass all of those kinds of hearings, so that we could create like a little, rotating group of people. We could, seek volunteers for that, and then we wouldn't always have to be creating these one-offs whenever we need a hearing officer for some function.
Makes sense.
So that would go hand in hand with this effort. Krista.
Again, ultimately, this is going to be up to the RTM to make any revisions, but I would be curious to hear what the police say. Do they want to continue to be part of this process, or is it better off in the hands of Public Works or someone like that? Because I do question, is this the role for the police?
Do we have the ability to give enforcement authority, Kate, to Public Works Department to issue citations?
Well, not under the current statutes or the current
or perhaps they give it
not in the current code, but I would think that it'd be something that you could do. We have the parking rangers are authorized to give parking tickets. They're not sworn officers, so it would seem to me that it would be feasible to allow, not unlimited people, but to designate certain members of the Public Works Department to be to issue citations.
Yeah, I'd like more information about that. Legally, can we give that enforcement authority, citation writing authority to Public Works employees?
Right. Does someone do it like for dogs off leash? Does that authority exist?
Animal control officer.
Right.
Which is
who's an officer. He's an officer, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to have a kind of a more inclusive process around looking at this and get input from folks from TGSNA, specifically on this part of the town code, since it's so important to everybody. Maybe we could
reach out to Frank.
Can we maybe invite Frank and anyone else he wants to invite to a future meeting to discuss it?
Okay.
Okay. I think that is the end of our review for the charter for tonight. So with that, we have some reappointments to make. We have to recommend to the RTM holding on that. We will get back in contact with Mr. Jessup to interview with us. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to him, but Linda will reach out to him tomorrow. So we only have the reappointment of Kathy Mulrow-Petey to the Parks and Rec Commission for a term expiring on March 31st, 2024. I'll entertain a motion. Sarah moves. Can I have a second?
Second.
David seconds. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, minutes. We have meeting minutes of our regular meeting of April 20th. Any corrections, additions? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 20th as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Kip seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Agenda review.
Jamie, are you abstaining on that one?
I can, I don't have to, but yes, you can put me down as next. I did watch your entire meeting. Okay, agenda review. Krista.
I just wanted to follow up. You did address it in your first selectmen's comments, but I do look forward to having this body take a look at the sidewalks again. I think there's interest from our body and certainly from the public. Part of that, it was interesting because we were addressing the capital plan. I would love to see a document that talks about sidewalks, specifically as far as a time frame, a timeline of repair or new, prioritize out however many years the Public Works is comfortable. And to have that on our website, on the Public Works site, they do have the information, for example, right now about Tokenique Road, which is fabulous, but I think transparency as to where they're going over X amount of years, I think would be very helpful to the community.
We'll have that as part of our discussion.
Yeah, part of the discussion, correct.
I would second Krista's comment. You know, I think the public is interested in this area, so to the extent that we could arrange to do that sooner than later, that would be good. And like Krista said, any information we have about this topic that we can get onto the website, I think the public would appreciate, because they don't, people don't seem to like it when they can't find out anything about a particular topic.
And it might be already on the radar. It's just scheduled for a time that is in the future, and we can let the public know it's in the works. I think that's great. That's
well, I know Ed's done a ton of work on this issue, so it'd be interesting to sort of see what his thoughts and plans are, because I view him as being super organized, and I wouldn't be surprised if he already has a plan for several years out.
I would agree.
I know that he does, and it'll give us also a chance to review the criteria and process that we put in place to make determinations about new sidewalks, right? And how you prioritize new sidewalks and whether it makes sense to construct them. So it'll be a great public information opportunity. David.
Could I just ask Kate to remind me, tonight we did 762 for the repair and maintenance of sidewalks. What did we budget for new sidewalks for the next fiscal year? Because I do remember that we did that. I just didn't remember the amount.
I have my handy dandy budget book here. We have copies for all of you in the office. I don't know if it's going to be, let's see.
I believe it's that amount.
Board of Selectmen proposed $750,000 for sidewalk rehab and residential so that's what you proposed. They actually, by doing it through bonding, they took it out.
But didn't we propose a separate line item for additional new sidewalks? Or do I have that? I could have it wrong.
I think you have that. I don't see it in here. I'm looking at the Board of Finance budget, and I don't see it in here.
All right, you know, don't worry about it. I'll play with it tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just going to try and go into OpenGov to pull it up, but we'll get you that information tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great. No worries.
Sarah.
On the topic of sidewalks, Krista is right. We need to be very transparent about kind of our plan, and I know there is a plan, so that would be great. But I also think we should include information in this particular section, if we put it on the website, about the process that is involved with sidewalks. I think we all know the process is much easier than putting down some cement and calling it a day. So I think we need to, explain to the public the process. It is lengthy.
You mean like getting rights of way and things like that?
And paying for that and legal and having all the neighbors sign off on it and
buying easements.
Yeah.
Yep. Then back to our topic on snow removal, I've certainly experienced, since I've been here, a whole variety of different opinions on the parts of homeowners on whether they would like sidewalks in front of their house or whether they don't. So it's not as easy as the town deciding that we want to put them someplace.
Right.
It's really
No, and if
important
it's
to
state roads
recognize the
involved.
property owner's rights and concerns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so that'll be a good discussion. All right, anything else for agenda review? Okay, hearing none, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
David moves, Krista seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay.